You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network. This is Talking Headways, a weekly podcast about sustainable transportation and urban design. I'm Jeff Wood. This week, Yonah Freemark of the Urban Institute is back again for part 2 of our annual discussion. This week, we make predictions. We look at what we predicted last year and what might happen in 2025. Stay with us. Today's podcast is brought to you by our super wonderful, terrific, amazing Patreon supporters. We appreciate you all keeping this show and Mondays at the Overhead Wire going. To join this merry band of city wizards and transportation experts, go to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. $2 a month gets you some stickers and a handwritten note sent with a cool train station stamp. $10 a month gets you one of our transportation scarves. We've also got some bonus material up there, so check it out if you haven't already. And speaking of scarves, the heavyweight net bike scarf is back in stock. I'm also going to make a concerted effort to make some new designs, but if you want to get one of the Buster Bike scarves or the Lightweight Bike scarf now, visit theoverheadwire.com or support us on Patreon. And if you'd like to support the show in other ways, you can buy books at the bookshop site, bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire, or find our Cars Are Cholesterol merch at bit.ly/carsarcholesterol. For anything else, including the Town Planning and Practice audiobook, visit theoverheadwire.com and definitely sign up for the almost 20-year-old daily newsletter. Or you can just keep listening and enjoying the show. We appreciate that too. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads, Instagram, Flickr, YouTube, Substack, and LinkedIn if you want to connect, usually at the Overhead Wire, but with Flickr, it's Transit Nerds. Some great stuff coming up, so keep on listening and enjoy the show. Okay, so let's get to the fun part. And I do want to say that this show, every year we do this, and it's fun and it's lighthearted, and we predict this stuff in the future. We look back at what we predicted before, but right now, we talk about the STIP stuff. We haven't talked about the gutting of research at TRB and other places that's been happening, and I don't know what's going to be left next year. We talk about predictions and stuff, right? And so I have been really down lately about it. I do think that that's important to note before we start making predictions and stuff, is that I do take that seriously about like what might actually happen and what might not be here next year. But I do think we should have some fun with this and still try to think positively about stuff. But I do want to note that at the top so that people don't think we're being flippant about, what might happen, because I am really scared about what possibly could happen.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And actually, I do think it's worth pointing out, I know that public sector workers listen to this show, and I just want to say that, I am truly thankful for the work that they do. And it's sad to me right now that a lot of them are under threat. And so thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And there's people that have been let go that listen to the show. I know personally that there's been folks that read my newsletter that have been let go, and people listen to the show, at the DOT and at HUD and other places. And so I just want to be mindful of that before we have a little fun.
Yep.
Okay, Yonah, in 2024, there were some guesses that we made that were very interesting.
Would you like to? Very wrong.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. So your first guess from last year was you guessed that there will be federal planning grant used to study the Roosevelt Avenue subway.
Oh.
A federal endorsement through money of Roosevelt Avenue subway. So
did that happen?
Well, kind of. It's a roundabout way, but maybe. So right after we chatted last year, there was a story in the Philly Voice that said there was $12 million for upgrades to Roosevelt Boulevard. And in that $12 million, there was $2 million for kickstarting the NEPA process by PennDOT on Roosevelt Avenue.
Okay.
And so there have been meetings about this project in 2025 already. There's poster board sessions and stuff in the city of Philadelphia. According to the city of Philadelphia's website, 2024 December and 2025 in January, February. So this has been happening. Now, the trick is here, it's not a federal grant necessarily, it's from PennDOT, but I would say that the funding that comes from the federal government through formula funds goes to PennDOT and then comes and goes.
I agree. I think that's a win. I think that's
Avenue.
A win.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a point because I think that is a win.
Great.
I'm interested in that project, but it's a little slower maybe than we might have thought and some of the boosters might have thought, but the NEPA process is starting. So there's that. I personally said, and this was not right, that it will be announced at the MPAC conference in Philadelphia in October that the project will be kicked off in earnest, which did not happen. My next one was very interesting and wrong. Nashville will not have a ballot measure or an election in 2024. And I said that I said that I hoped that I was wrong, and I was wrong.
You were wrong, and it won.
And it won. It won resoundingly. And they've gone through and beat all the lawsuits that were trying to say that they had one word here or one word there that was wrong on the ballot. So I appreciate that. You did mention last year how you were disappointed, though, about our low expectations of what we can accomplish. And I think we covered that earlier in this show. But I found that notable as well, as you were like, well, it's great, but we don't have these big ideas anymore. It's just like transit signal priority, fixing some sidewalks and funding for service.
Yeah, but you know what? Fixing sidewalks, listen, everybody needs a good sidewalk. I'm all in favor of it. If I said that last year, I take it back. Let's improve the sidewalks.
You didn't say not to do sidewalks. You just said you were worried about the low expectations. Okay, so the next one for you. My positive prediction, you said, the Indiana bill to prevent bus lanes will not pass. Is true.
It didn't pass. Oh, yeah, because they made some sort of compromise, right?
Yeah, they made some sort of compromise. I don't remember what the compromise was.
It had something to do with the blue line, like not having full. Yeah, it was like a last minute thing, right?
It was a last minute thing, yeah. But SB 52 died, so you were correct.
Another point. Yes,
another point. See, you were worried, and I told you not to be worried. You're very smart, Nostra Yonah. You're very smart. Okay, here's mine that you might find hilarious as well from last year. I predict that congestion pricing will be delayed due to stupid lawsuits and will not open in May. It will open October, is what I said.
Oh, now, wow.
I did not expect the governor to get in on this action. The double heel turn from Governor Hochul did not factor into my prediction, but I said it would be delayed. I said it would open. So I would think maybe I should get 0.75 for that.
Oh, no. That's a full point. It doesn't. No. I think you deserved that. Come on.
But that I said lawsuits. I didn't say Hochul.
Yeah, it's all part of the same story.
What do you think about all this mess about the congestion pricing? What's happening with that? I think they're going to win. I think they have a good case.
The MTA. You think the MTA is going to win?
Yeah.
I think, well, that can be a prediction. Should we make a prediction?
I think that's one of my predictions for next year. I have it on my list. Yeah.
Oh, so your prediction is that the MTA
will crush the Trump administration with their lawsuit. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to predict that you're wrong. Whatever. You can write that down as well.
We'll find out. We'll find out next year. Tune in for next year. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, like this is crazy. I mean, the governor basically saying, we're going to lower the price and we're going to hold it back. And it was because Jeffries wanted a couple more seats, which ended up not necessarily mattering super much. But it might have been the death. If they win on the lawsuit, it might have been the death of congestion pricing. And then the only silver lining is that we got to see it work really, really well for a few months.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be, it's very exciting that it's working so well. Congestion pricing. I mean, the advocates appear to have been right. It is accomplishing the goals that it was set out to do. So, hey, it's a win for public policy.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, you said Colorado will pass a statewide land use reform bill. It's true. It's true. It did. They passed it. Now certain cities are saying they will not comply with the law and they're worried about local control, but it passed, and Jared Polis signed it. Signed HB 1313 in May of last year. It mandated that local governments in 5 MPOs change zoning to accommodate high-density transit-oriented communities to 40 dwelling units an acre. The penalty was losing state transportation funding if they didn't adapt. So some local governments are pushing back: Westminster, Arvada, Colorado Springs. I wrote down this quote from a Westminster City Council member that you might enjoy.
Okay.
Everyone's going to flee the state in droves because people want single-family homes. That's why people are leaving the state. They don't want to live in apartments from birth to death. I saw this stuff in Russia, and it was built under Lenin.
Oh my gosh.
That's a Westminster City Council.
Well, now that we're allied with Russia, shouldn't we be supporting that stuff?
Yeah, shouldn't we be building brutalist architecture that is horrible and keeps people in line? No. No apartment blocks are going to be a part of this, but hopefully there will be some TOD. So that happened. So you get another point, Yonah.
Yes.
You are sitting pretty right now. Okay. I said the Santa Clara section of the BART extension will get lopped off for cost.
Oh.
And that was wrong. That did not happen.
What is the status of that right now? Is it just sort of, they said they were doing some revisions, right?
They're apparently doing some revisions. So they got $5.1 billion through a capital improvement grant. They wanted, I think, $7 or $8 billion. They're not getting that. And they're certainly not getting that now. No revisions are going to happen with the new administration. But they've been working on some cost-cutting measures because they didn't get the money that they wanted. And so one of the cost-cutting measures is changing that deep bore tunnel to maybe more shallow construction, which has been something that advocates have been begging for years. And the locals have been putting up a fight on because they said, it's too far along. We can't go back now. But I saw somewhere that like the tunnel boring machine that's the biggest in the world that they are building with $75 million, even if they save 5% of the budget by doing this different boring, it's actually better than the 1% they spent on that tunnel boring machine. So they might just
interesting.
They might just get rid of it altogether, I guess. But who knows what's actually happening in Santa Clara? That's so far down south to me. I don't know. But other people listening to this show would probably know, maybe can tell us. Adina Levin always knows this stuff, so she might be able to tell us what's going on. But yeah, so that was mine. I got a negative. I got a 0 on that one as well. Yonah said, Brightline will finalize plans for bringing the extension from Orlando to Tampa.
Oh, that didn't happen.
No, it did not happen. So you got 0 on that one.
Oh, no.
It's delayed. Apparently it's been delayed. I saw some articles suggesting that it's a decade away and that the price tag is likely $4 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I guess the problem is getting from Orlando Airport. The highway reservation is not there. Is that the problem?
I think that's part of the problem. I think they are not sure how to get into Tampa as well. I think there's a lot of roads and stuff that are in the way. And also Brightline has had some, they've been revising their ridership estimates, and I think it's a harder task for them in terms of funding and stuff. But, it's hard to build a railroad line. You know this.
Well, yeah, it is hard. I mean, to be fair, the Biden administration spent a lot of money on the Brightline West project. And
they did, yeah.
It seems like that project is happening. So maybe Brightline's just focused on that.
It's not getting as much scrutiny either because it's in the desert, I think.
Yeah.
Partly. And so finally, my fantastical idea, this is the last prediction of last year. My fantastical idea was some legislator is going to put together a pot of money for smaller network bus improvements, whether that's signal priority, queue jumping, pinch point management, etc. That can be accessed by transit agencies around the country. That did not happen.
It's a good idea, though. I still support it.
I like that idea.
It's a campaign platform. Let's make it happen.
We should do that. In the next transportation bill, we should put that together. That's a win we can have. Okay, Yonah, so you had 3 points and I had 0.75 points. I think, again, you win. Yonah Damas, Nostra Yonah.
Maybe my predictions are too predictable or something. I don't know.
No, because I mean, who knows if they're going to pass a land use bill in Colorado? There was a lot of opposition to it.
Fair.
The Roosevelt Avenue subway, who knew whether they get funding or not? So I think you're doing okay.
Okay.
I think you're doing okay. And who knew whether the Indiana bill to prevent bus lanes is going to pass or not? I mean, it almost failed. So,
right.
We're good.
Somebody should pay me for this.
Yeah. I'll send you a scarf, another scarf. Okay. So next year. We got to make predictions. We got to make predictions. We're done, seeing what we did last year. We got to do predictions for next year so we can laugh at ourselves again in 12 months.
Okay, so you already have a congestion pricing prediction.
I do. So my first prediction is congestion pricing will beat the administration. This will win all day, every day in court, and the road rules secretary can pound sand. That's what I wrote down.
Yes, I love it.
So that's where I'm at on that one.
Okay, I want to make a congestion pricing related prediction, which is that another city in the U.S. will announce that it's going to pursue a congestion pricing plan seriously. So it's going to be among Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Boston. One of those cities is going to have their mayor announce that they're going to pursue congestion pricing seriously.
Are you going to throw in Los Angeles or no?
No.
Okay. I'm following all the papers and seeing what people are saying. And that's one of the papers that wrote, maybe we can do this here. Or, somebody said, maybe we can do this here. So I saw Boston. I didn't see Seattle as much. Maybe they did. I don't subscribe to the Seattle Times. So maybe they did talk about it in there. But the other places have all talked about it, like you said, in their papers, saying, maybe we can do this. Like I said, even though there's only been a couple of months of this, if it gets shut down, I think people know now. They're like, yeah, that works.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the Pandora's box has been opened on this, and it's going to do wonders for some of these places that are thinking about doing it. And I'm also wondering, the other thing about that specifically is like, because we had to sign that value pricing plan, the USDOT had to sign the thing saying it's okay to do this. Do other cities have to sign that same thing? Or is it because there was a certain highway that was going through New York that they had to sign that. No,
no, I think they all will have to, unfortunately.
So
yeah,
that makes it harder to do because, but what the memo said pricing as a mechanism is one of our key funding programs.
They love user pays. So if they love user pays, they got to love the congestion pricing. So I'm waiting.
Yeah. So that's yours. So you want me to do another one, or you want to go? You go for this one first.
Oh, okay. I'll do a prediction.
Number 2.
My next prediction is going to be that New York State legislators are going to come up with a new tax source to support the MTA's capital plan. And I'm saying this in part because I think the congestion pricing, as I said before, is going to fail in the courts. We'll see. But nonetheless, even if it succeeds, I think that the legislature is going to pass some new funding package that's going to involve a new tax source for the MTA.
Do you have an idea of what that tax source may be or what you wish it would be?
I wish it would be a increase in the state gas tax because it turns out New York actually has pretty low gas tax compared to, for example, Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania passed a very large gas tax increase. And, crisis has not occurred in Pennsylvania. And I think there's an opportunity here to support New York State.
So I've been interested in interesting funding mechanisms because I've seen a couple of items recently about cities doing different stuff. Des Moines, Iowa is going to increase its franchise fee for utilities to use the roads to pay for its transit network, its buses. San Antonio has like a cell phone tax where they're going to use a cell phone tax to pay for transit funding.
How does that work? What are they?
You put a surcharge on the cell phone. It's like a tax that goes on the cell phone bill. So if you're using a cell phone, you are, paying for transportation in the region.
Okay.
And then I got an email from somebody saying Bakersfield actually does a franchise tax and it pays for road funding stuff too on PG&E.
Huh.
And so there's a lot of little like tweaks and things you could do to raise money. I find that was really interesting, especially the cell phone tax. But the franchise fee goes back to, the streetcars of early days because that's how they were doing their thing, their utility companies and the franchise fees. And that's what got a lot of them in trouble, obviously. But interesting ways of funding stuff. So I was interested to hear your ideas on that. Okay, so funding mechanism, speaking of, my next prediction is that California will figure out a new funding mechanism for speeding up high-speed rail. And the fact that it's completed all of its environmental clearances will make it a candidate for new sources of funding. And my wild prediction is it will be available for cap and trade monies from different countries and states like Washington State, which just passed it.
Wait, so California is going to get money from Washington State's cap and trade?
Well, if you're trading carbon, maybe you can sell some credits to somebody in a co-op of some sort. That's why I'm saying it's a wild prediction.
I love it. Wild. Totally out. No, it's great. It's fantastic.
I don't know if they can trade between states, but, carbon is global. It doesn't stop at the state border, so.
Okay.
Maybe you can sell some credits. I don't know. I know that they get money from the California cap and trade program. So that's where that kind of idea came from. But all these countries around the world are starting these cap and trade programs or carbon pricing or carbon taxes and things like that. There's a city in China that actually sold credits from its transit agency to the carbon market of the country and was able to raise funding that way. I think about $800,000 or something like that.
So is your prediction sort of based on the assumption that the Trump administration is going to sort of pull back federal dollars? And so you're thinking state is going to need to fill in the gap in some way?
Both that, and I think we're getting to the point where we really need to speed this thing up, and it's getting attacked on all sides. It still has a 54% approval rating by voters in the state. There was a poll that just came out like a week ago. 54% is a pretty good number. That's how much the bond passed, I think 53 or 54% back in 2008. Another 2008er. So I think in addition to the feds pulling back money, I think that there needs to be a new funding source that can just like get this thing going and get it over the line because we need to start building. We need to start tunneling between Bakersfield and LA, and we need to start tunneling between Merced and San Francisco. So we need to get that thing going. Or Merced and San Jose because we've got the Caltrain electrification that happened already.
Okay, that's cool. I hope you're right. I love that prediction. I think it is a bit wild in terms of realism, but I love it.
Well, I mean, there's two parts to it, right? There's we will need to look for new funding, but then there's also the type of funding it is. So the type of funding is its own basket of prediction.
Yeah.
The funding search is my main prediction there.
Well, I think that the speeding up is the maybe hardest element of it. But I did see that Senator Weiner is trying to put together a bill that would in some way speed it up, right?
Yeah, he's trying to get it so that CEQA approvals and permits and stuff are just as of right for certain projects like high-speed rail, light rail projects, subway expansions, and stuff like that. He did it for small projects, bus lanes and bike lanes and things like that last year, but he's trying to make it for bigger projects now, and I think that could be wildly successful.
Super cool. Okay.
You're up next.
Let's see. I keep thinking of the Canada High-Speed Rail project because I just spoke with somebody who was involved in that project. And it's sort of a moderate level prediction that might have seemed crazy like a month ago is that because of the Trump backlash, I think...
Now, are you trading on insider information
No,
here?
no. I just spoke to a random spokesman. No. But I think, the Canadian federal election is coming up very soon. I think that the Liberals are going to win the election, and I think they're going to double down on getting this project moving forward. And I think one of the things we'll see is an announcement that the project will move forward more quickly than the 5 years before construction, which is what they initially announced. So I'm predicting that the new government is going to announce this, going to speed it up, and also that they're going to advance the project that has been proposed between Calgary and Edmonton as a second high-speed rail project.
Kind of to cover their bases across the country.
Yeah.
Geographic equity, as it were.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think, the tariffs and the closeness of the, how do you say his name? Any Polivier?
I'm not sure. I don't
whatever, the P guy. Who is in Canada, who is the conservative leading the charge there for them. I think he's kind of got himself in trouble because he's too close to this guy who's threatening the country. And Canadians listening to this show specifically, I do not want you to become the 51st state. I think you should be your own country. And anybody who says otherwise is an asshole.
Fully endorse. I agree.
Just get that out there. Be your own thing. Ukraine, be your own thing. Canada, be your own thing. And that's all I got to say about that. So my next prediction is more governors in blue states will start flexing highway monies to pay for transit service.
Ooh, yeah.
Josh Shapiro did it. Why can't anybody else?
Ooh, I like that prediction so much. And, it's such an opportunity as long as the feds don't decide to step in.
As long as they don't decide that you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's in the bill. It's in the transportation
it's in
bill.
The law. The Congress should prevent that from happening, but,
they haven't done anything yet, prevented
things
anything
are crazy.
Yet.
So
I'm so amazed that they're just going to give away their power like that. Those power hungry people, maybe they just feel like they're going to be giving it back. No,
I'm not sure. I mean, I am shocked.
Once you eat a cookie, you're not giving it back.
Yeah. Well, related to that, I have a prediction about the next surface transportation bill, which is going up to Congress. They'll have to pass something in 2026.
They're talking about it now. They had an EPW meeting about it yesterday.
Right. Already talking about it. And one of the things that I'm expecting is that the competitive parts of the infrastructure law, which were 20% of transportation spending back in 2021, I predict they're going to get rid of it entirely. There will be no competitive grants.
No, like raise grants or build grants or whatever you want to call them. There's going to be no.
I think they're just going to kill all those programs.
You don't think they're just going to weight it down and be like, you're going to rural Wisconsin and you're going to rural Appalachia and you're going to here, and they're not even going to try that. They're just going to get rid of them. Yeah,
my prediction is that they're just going to go entirely to formula, and it's going to maintain the state focus of the formula today, unfortunately.
I guess that matches what they're doing by hacking off the civil service, right? Like they're getting rid of all these DOT employees. They don't have the people to be giving away grants, right? So they're just going to do formula funds, and that's their way of saying this is more efficient, which is bullshit, as you know.
Well, and I think one thing that is not necessarily understood by a lot of these senators and Congress people, but maybe if anybody's listening, if they care, is that the competitive grants allow for localities to play a role in the transportation program that they usually don't get to play a role in because of the way the system is structured. So by getting rid of the competitive grants, you're essentially taking localities out of the conversation, which is a pretty disappointing process.
That's one of the big things I think that happened during the Biden administration was the local pay stuff. And it's not just transportation grants, but stuff in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that basically said, for utilities and things like that, you can apply directly for funding for, getting heat pumps or whatever else for communities. That's huge difference between having to go through some regulating agency at your state or something like that.
Yep.
And the same thing for transportation projects. If you want a bike lane, you could go straight to the feds and say, I want a bike lane. And then if it fits a certain, thing, you can go and get them instead of having to go formula funds through the state. And then the state, which may or may not be friendly to your type of projects, would get it through. And it's not just like the big cities, it's these small towns, right? Small towns and rural places that could apply for stuff if they had the capacity. That's another question about whether that happens. That was actually kind of a problem for a lot of places if they were too small, even if they're applying for state funding. But if they're applying for federal funding as well, they're too small. They might have had help from the Rockefeller Foundation or somebody else that made that work. But aside from that, I mean, it was a benefit for these places that may have never have gotten a federal grant being able to go and get one for something they may need. It didn't even have to be a bike lane. It could have been like a street light or a traffic light or something along those lines. So it's definitely going to be negative for everybody, not just like blue states and blue cities. Okay, my last one. Transit ridership will continue to rebound around the country as more people are required to return to the office.
Yeah. So that makes sense to me with one exception, which is, how do you feel about, I mean, I live in Washington, D.C. The ridership has been going up quite substantially here, partially because of return of office, but at the same time, they're firing all the staff for the federal government. I kind of wonder, do you think that will apply to D.C. or do you think D.C. will be different?
They got to get to the protests somehow.
Maybe you're right. Okay.
Maybe the Trump administration will just shut down the subway altogether because they're tired of the protests. I don't know. I did think about that actually when I was thinking about this, because if all of these civil servants are losing their jobs, and it will hurt DC the worst because that's where a lot of them are. But a lot of them are all over the country. I mean, I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day of folks saying like my staff in California, Nevada, the Western DOT offices are getting hit as well. So it's not just in DC, it's like people all over the country that work for the federal government. Like the largest city that has federal workers is Kansas City. Most of their economy is based on federal offices for USDA and other things that are working on farm stuff. So, who knows what's going to happen to Kansas City and other places like, I think Bay Area, you can absorb some of the folks that are being laid off in the transportation sector, but in other cities that are very heavily federal, it's not going to be good. And then the college towns too, right? All these NIH grants and all the Academy of Sciences grants and stuff that are getting disappeared, that's going to really impact college towns, which I think is what their point is. They're trying to kill off these blue dots in these red states that are voting the other way. So, this is a systematic dismantling of the system as it is now. What you got? What's your fantastical?
Positive way to...
Yeah, no, I don't want to end like that.
Okay, end it with something exciting and fun.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit wild. I did the wild one last year. You get the fantastical idea this year.
Okay, my wild thing is that the Detroit region will finally come together with an actual regional transit plan and the funding to create a great network of transit service that serves not only Wayne County, but also the surrounding counties.
Wow.
Excellent frequent bus service.
Okay. That is fantastical, but it is also excellent. What makes you think that? There must be a sliver of idea there.
I think that Michigan has this progressive streak in it right now. The legislature has Republicans in control, but I don't know. I think that there is an interest in improving the state. I think that the governor has been pretty dynamic. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure that folks there are aware of the fact that they can't just continue the status quo with the way things are going. So I don't know. I'm enthusiastic about them thinking about a different type of future.
I think that's true, but also I think that it's really interesting to watch what's been happening in Detroit lately and in Southeast Michigan, mostly because of the idea of the narrative taking hold for so many decades that it was a loser county, it was a loser city, the people were leaving in terms of population loss.
Yep.
Nobody there's a loser. But like it was a story that was told over and over again. And then the census said, you guys got some population gain. And everybody's like, what? We gained population? And so the story flips and the narrative flips and everybody's excited about Detroit again. And I think that's just wonderful. Mm-hmm. And I think, the idea of the Rust Belt, the term itself, some people who have been there a long time see it as negative, but others, the new folks are like, hey, this is what we are. So, screw you if you don't like it. We're the Rust Belt and we like it. And so I think that narrative change and that attitude change is really necessary and really exciting too at the same time.
Yeah. And, the administration can do all it wants to deny climate change, but here's the reality. Places in the South and West are going to get increasingly hot. They're going to suffer from increasing numbers of disasters. The Great Lakes states have a lot of potential. Their climate is better.
A lot of water.
They have fewer disasters. These are places that should grow into the future. So I don't know. I'm bullish about the future of these places.
Yeah. And, realistically, as we found out in Appalachia in North Carolina, there are no real climate havens necessarily, but there are places that are better than others to a certain extent. Yeah. And I think that that's true of a lot of these Midwestern cities. They might see a population gain because of whatever happens in the southern states. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Florida. I mean, the governor is talking about getting rid of property taxes altogether, and they're already having an insurance crisis as it is. And housing prices are kind of leveling out and maybe going south because people can't get insurance because of the climate crisis.
Yep.
So we're going to see a real mess happen, and it might be another migration north, which might be interesting, and it might be a new era.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So the question is, can we build housing to...
Can you do it fast enough?
Give people the chance to stay in northern cities and enjoy their lives there.
Yeah. Well, Yonah, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think...
We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. We're in a challenging time, but I think... we just got to push for better places. That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah. As, it gets tougher at the federal level, the local and the state levels are going to be where it's at. And there's where you can make change. And again, there's stuff you can do, instead of doom scrolling, you can, volunteer locally. You can call your representatives. You can do all kinds of stuff to try to figure out how you fit into this larger world of planning in cities and making them better. And everybody who's listening to this show is already on that track because our audience may be smaller than, say, like a 99% invisible, but we are mighty and we are focused on these issues specifically. And so, we can make our places better. And Yonah, you're always writing papers and doing really great stuff, and I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Where can folks find you if you wish to be found?
Well, I guess maybe a change since last year. I'm no longer on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, but I am on Blue Sky, Yonah Freemark, always posting on there and also on LinkedIn. Okay.
It's interesting to change, midstream, and we've made changes before. I mean, you and I both did blog a lot on our sites, and and that disappeared when Facebook and Twitter came out, and now it's just another change. I think it's just an evolution per se of what's happening. But
absolutely.
Well, Yonah, thanks again for joining us. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next year.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. The Talking Headways podcast is a project of The Overhead Wire and appears first at Streetsblog USA. Thanks to our generous Patreon supporters for supporting this show and Mondays at The Overhead Wire. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/TheOverheadWire. Sign up for our 18-year-old daily newsletter by visiting TheOverheadWire.com or check the show notes for other cool merch and opportunities to connect. Follow along using your podcatcher of choice, but if you can't find it there, you can always find the show at its original home, usa.streetsblog.org. We'll see you next time at Talking Headways.